It was dark. The sun had gone down and the night sky scarcely lit where a soldier stood, stationed guarding Tower Green. Everyone knew this was the spot where several noblemen, even queens, had been executed, and he had heard of specters walking the grounds for centuries. This is why he took no notice at first, when he saw movement out of the corner of his eyes. Though his heart was pounding, he knew it was his mind deceiving him, and the tales of ghosts in the back of his imagination creating a fright from nothing. But within a few seconds, he could see it again, looming at the corner of his vision. This time he turned, readying himself to laugh at how ridiculous he must be for believing in such stories. His gasp caught in his throat when there, in front of him, he saw the figure of a woman. She was dressed in period clothing and standing still as stone, where no one had been before. He stifled a scream as he realized this figure had no head. He pulled out his bayonet and stabbed at the woman before him, but the dagger sunk right through, as if she were made of air. The shock of the ordeal sent him to his knees, and the last thing he remembered before falling to the ground was the woman fading from view. It said the man was nearly fired, for those who found him assumed he had been sleeping on the job. He pleaded his case, claiming he must have fallen unconscious from shock at the sight, and the many men who came forward after gave credence to his claims, as they, too, had seen the ghost of Anne Boleyn walking those same grounds whilst working through the night. The Tower of London is an incredible piece of history, its walls containing stories of murder, sabotage, and torture. And with each event recorded comes a legend following. Legends of screams still heard in the night, footsteps marking the steps of those long past, and those who experienced the Tower of London through the years remaining within its stone walls long after their deaths.
Hi. Hello.
I'm Macy.
You kind of really caught me off guard.
Okay, good.
I was ready for like, hi ghosties, like cheery, and now it's scary.
Well, I wanted to give a little spooky because the Tower of London is a little spooky. There's a lot to it.
Oh, okay. Well, would you like to greet the people?
Yes, hi, I'm Macy.
And I'm Natalie.
And this is Ghosteas. We're talking about the Tower of London today, if you can't tell. I'm excited. There is a lot to the history, and I spent the majority of like the last week learning about the history of the British monarchy. So I cut a lot out. I had to cut a lot out because it turned into a history podcast, which I enjoy, but there was little room for ghosts. So just know we're gonna kind of breeze through some of the history.
Stick to the ghosts.
So with that being said, our tea today, it was sent in by someone we do not know. It was just sent in the packaging of the producer, the manufacturer. Friday afternoon tea. Bad news.
And it smells like bad news.
It's black tea, chicory root, maybe rose or something, and then pine smoke, which those of you who have been here for a while or have watched some of our older episodes, I think it might have been our Haunted Woods episode.
Mm-hmm.
We tried a pine smoky tea. And
you tried.
Yeah, I tried.
That's the only episode that I've ever not tried the tea. I told her absolutely not. I'm going to suck it up. I'm going to try this one because someone sent it to us.
Yes.
But if it was purchased by us, I would not be trying it. So whoever you are out there, thank you, ? I will be trying it.
Yeah, we'll see. I think I'm just scared because of the last time.
No, I'm like about to start sweating. I'm scared.
SpongeBob trying the Gary snail food.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm scared. But let's go.
It smells good if it weren't in a cup. You know, like if I were to smell this when I walked outside in the woods, then I'd be like, oh, someone's having a bonfire. But I wouldn't think, now let's drink it.
Okay, we usually try it off camera, but I think for you all and for evidence if I die, let's do it.
So it may be because out of fear, it's half sugar, half tea. Not bad. Again, half sugar, half tea. I do not like the remaining flavor of pine smoke, though.
Yeah. That's a no for me, dog.
Okay.
No offense.
It's interesting. It's got an interesting flavor. The Tower of London is a site of so much history and intrigue, designated a World Heritage Site. It's been around for over 900 years, and to discuss every facet of its construction, expansion, and the politics behind the scenes would be a feat. I'm sure there are podcasts dedicated to this exactly. But to get a full picture, the complete understanding of why such a place would be wildly haunted, we need to tell the story of the tower, its grounds, and the many people who lost their lives along the way. There are so many interesting pieces of history held here for British history just in general. And like I said, I was originally like diving really deeper into like the politics and the convoluted string of royalty and all of that stuff. But I realized it was just falling too much into a podcast about London rather than a podcast about ghosts. So I highly recommend you go back if you're interested in anything about this. Go back and read up on yourself. There are plenty of resources put out by the Tower of London, put out by the royal whatever on the internet. So I highly recommend. I have been to the Tower of London.
You rat. I've
What?
never been to London, and I would like to.
I went for a week in March of 2017,
That's wild.
and it was a lot of fun.
And you got severely ill.
I did. So the first day we were there, we arrived in the evening. I went to a pub and had some fish and chips and a beer. I was not 21 yet, so I couldn't drink in the States. So I was like, ooh, I bought my first official, beer. Great night. The next morning I woke up violently ill. Half of us got food poisoning. It was a study abroad trip with an English class. Yeah, half of us got sick, had to go to the hospital and everything. But yeah, London, one of my favorite places that I've ever been. The Tower of London was really cool. I barely remember. I remember being at the Tower of London. I remember walking in and thinking, wow, this is amazing. But like details, I don't know. I have a picture. I have a few pictures. We'll show them here. I have a picture of a window in the Tower of London. I do not know why. I don't know if the guide said something about the window and I was like, wow, that's cool, and don't remember the story, or if I saw the window and thought, that's a nice window and took a picture. But yeah, insert window picture here. I don't know. So to start, on Christmas Day of 1066, William the Conqueror held his coronation after defeating King Harold at the Battle of Hastings. As he looked around his new kingdom, he felt it was missing the castle he knew would establish his rule and consolidate his power. So he set in motion the plans for the first building placed at the site we know today as the Tower of London. The White Tower, as it's called today, began construction in 1078 with stones imported from France, and it took more than 20 years to build, just this first building. It was the first castle keep of its kind in the area, playing the role of both awing and subduing the Londoners after the defeat of their previous king. So he wanted to make it known, I am your captain now.
Oh.
I am your ruler now. You will obey me, but also look at this cool building.
Okay, nice.
As well as deterring any who thought to come and take the newly acquired land from him. So it was a deterring factor too to others. It went on to be a place of many uses for the medieval kings and queens of England, boasting luxurious apartments for visitors as well as royal chapels, serving the noblemen and women of the day, be that incarcerated or free. The tower has expanded on through the years, adding a bell tower for warning those residing at the tower and further fortification to protect the structures within. Henry III and his son Edward I constructed curtain walls and a series of smaller towers around the original structures. He also expanded the moat and gave the White Tower its name by having the keep painted white. The tower became England's largest and strongest concentric castle. So, King Henry III and Edward I, his son, kind of really did a lot of projects within and for the Tower of London. Though it wasn't a permanent home to any royal, they did stay on occasion and needed something fit for a royal and their party. Henry III and Edward I stayed in what we call today the medieval palace, which is St. Thomas Tower, the Wakefield Tower, and the Lanthorn Tower, with their queens after having them decorated to the likes of a monarch and his family. So like to the nines.
Lavish.
Yes. If you visit today, actually, you'll see that they've kind of redecorated and recreated what they believe based on writings and of the time, what a bedroom like that would look like.
I would love to see it.
It's
That's
very
what
cool.
I imagine your house would be like.
There are lots of, definitely, first of all, there are a lot of pictures online too. Edward I also established a royal mint within the tower walls. All coins of the kingdom were made here, though as you'd imagine, it wasn't the safest of places to work. It gave off immense heat from the fires of the furnace that melted the metals, and the air was full of poisonous gases. All the coins were made by hand for many years, and the loss of an eye or fingers was common.
Oh.
There is one story told from the 1540s when a potter fell asleep over his pot, unknown whether from exhaustion or being knocked out from poisonous gases, but he could not be woken. He was in a coma for 14 days following this. He survived, but many men did not, even after they followed the advice of drinking milk from a human skull to counteract the gases. I don't know, dude.
Why the skull?
I don't know. The people who had worked before, like some of the like higher ups, would tell them, oh, well, if you start to feel ill, just drink milk from this skull. I don't know.
Okay.
The mint was eventually moved and made much safer for workers, though the stains of its past remain. The tower was such a stronghold that not only were the kingdom's coins made here, but also arms and armor. So it was a safe spot for anything of like great value and importance to be made within its walls. Royals stored some of their most precious belongings here, like jewels. The crown jewels actually still remain today. Arms, clothing, and themselves. There has only been one occasion when the tower's defenses failed. During the Peasants' Revolt of 1381, rebels looking to hold accountable those who had raised their taxes, once again, it was like the fourth time in 3 years, a force of 10,000 yeomen, craftsmen, and laborers took to the streets of London and onto the tower, demanding the heads of the traitors governing on behalf of 14-year-old Richard II. So they didn't really blame him because he was only 14.
14,
He
yeah.
blamed the people who were kind of in charge of him, helping him rule.
Yeah. That's wild.
But-
14.
Yeah, well, he's not even the youngest king.
That's crazy.
He and his mother and the rest of his household fled to the tower for protection from the angry mob. So even though he wasn't to blame and he didn't think that they all blamed him, it was still better. Like, they're an angry mob,
Yeah.
you know? The capital was plundered and burned for 2 days while the young boy and his mother hid in St. John's Chapel before they made it to the fortress. The people made it to the fortress. Described by Jean Froissart, a contemporary of the times, quote, "The king has ridden out to meet the rebels at Mile End." So they finally made it. And so the king said, "I'll go out and meet them. I'll see if I can help the situation." And a mob of at least 400 men stormed the castle. So the gate wasn't brought up after he came out. The men at arms guarding the tower put up no resistance, and the peasants shook their hands as brothers and stroked their beards in a friendly fashion. They were
Ew.
like, "Hey, we're all coming. We're all together in this."
Okay.
They ran through the tower hunting for the traitors, in particular the Archbishop of Canterbury, Simon Sudbury. He was the king's chancellor and hated by the rebels. He had tried to escape via the Thames River, but was forced back into the tower walls where he sat in the chapel awaiting his death. He was dragged out of the tower and beheaded right there with 8 strokes. It took 8 strokes. His head displayed on a spike over the gate of the nearby London Bridge. Eventually, the king met the men at Smithfield and calmed the crowd, still unruly, proclaiming, quote, "You shall have no captain but me." Feeling their voices heard and their cause rectified, the men dispersed and the revolt had ended, though several of them were killed. Unfortunately for Richard, he would eventually return to the tower, once again imprisoned, though this time by his cousin, Henry IV. He would lose his crown and his life by either starvation or murder. It's unsure.
Tea.
Lots of tea.
Really?
Lots of tea for the whole royal line. So before we speak further on the tower's reputation as a prison, there is another use that the tower had for over 600 years. It housed the creatures and beasts gifted to the kings and queens of England, beginning with King John sometime in the 1210s. There are records showing payments to lion keepers at the tower, and the royal menagerie grew on from there. Kept on its grounds and within its walls was an array of exotic animals, some bought and some gifted, most gifted. Kings were gifted lions, leopards, African elephants, and even a polar bear given by the King of Norway.
Why?
I don't know.
Just to say you have it?
Just, yeah, pretty much the King of Norway was like, "Hey, look at this cool thing." Like, "Hey, never seen that before. Bring it on in."
Ugh. I don't like that.
It was kept muzzled and chained most of the time, but it was allowed access to the Thames on occasion on a leash to swim and hunt for fish.
It's so sad.
This whole thing is sad.
I don't like any of this.
Me neither. I don't like a regular zoo, so I don't think I'd like this zoo.
Same.
Londoners would flock to the tower to see these strange and unusual animals, and as you can probably guess, the animals were not treated very well. They were caged in particularly small cages. Some fed wine instead of water, just because they didn't know how to take care of them. They were like, "I'm sure this animal likes wine. It's the best thing we have."
I'm enraged.
Some of the animals didn't survive long in the captivity of the tower, but various cats, like lions, lynxes, hyenas, tigers, eagles, wolves, monkeys, and also a brown bear, were kept for many to see. So eventually people were allowed to come in, like pay a little bit of money to see these animals, like a zoo. You could often hear the roaring of animals as you made your way past the tower. Workers and visitors alike had been reported maimed by the creatures and even killed on occasion. So like the lion would just attack.
Well, I would too.
Yeah,
Put me in a cage.
In 1831, after the death of George IV, the remaining animals were moved over to Regent's Park at the London Zoo, and the Lion Tower eventually demolished. So eventually they were like, "This is not the place for animals. Let's treat these things better." I mean, I don't know if they were treating them very well in 1830s, but
Yeah.
I believe that the London Zoo is treating the animals better now.
I hope so.
Only one kind of animal remains at the Tower of London today, and those are the ravens.
Ooh.
I have pictures of the ravens too. Well, one picture.
Interesting. That's already spooky. I like ravens.
Yes, well, in the late 1600s, during the reign of Charles II, it is believed that the king insisted on the protection of the birds of the tower. There is a legend that has persisted for hundreds of years about these very special ravens. It is said that if the ravens ever leave the tower, then the tower and the kingdom will fall. So even against the behest of his astronomer, who complained often that the birds were making his job more difficult, Charles II had the ravens' feathers clipped in a way that made it difficult for them to leave the ground. So they could still fly, but they were clipped short enough that they couldn't fly way far.
Aww.
It is a little sad. There are ravens being cared for by the Raven Master at the tower today. Their feathers carefully managed to keep them there, but they receive lots of food. They're fed like twice a day with like all the things a raven would love. Even biscuits soaked in blood, which apparently is like a special treat for them. There have been a few that have gone missing over the years, as well as fired. So one of them, I can't remember its name.
The bird is fired?
The bird is fired from its position, and a new one takes its place because one of them was like chewing the TV antennas. They were like, okay, maybe you belong elsewhere. So they like put them, I don't know, either release them or put them elsewhere and hired a new one on. But some of them have escaped. Raven Munin was spotted flying over Greenwich and returned by a good Samaritan after 7 days. So he had like a good 7-day spree.
Should have left him
in the wilds. And Raven Grog, though, is one raven that took to the skies, last seen outside a pub in the East End. So someone at a pub was like, hey, is that a raven from the tower? And it just took off and never seen again, living his best life.
I'm very into this.
The ravens are cool. Ravens in general are cool. They do say if you come to visit the Tower of London, do not feed them because they will. They can bite you.
Oh, I'm not getting close to it. I'm afraid.
But they're cool to look at.
I'm afraid of the birds on my porch. Oh,
that is
for
true.
Those that were keeping up with the bird saga on my porch, the gray bird is gone, and the 2 barn swallows, I figured out what they were. The 2 barn swallows had their baby, so now the mom and the dad and the baby are hanging out, and I Googled it, and they're going to be here for a couple more weeks, and then the baby will be off on its own.
Aw, how cute.
So the mom and dad still bring it food, and I watch them do that. I peek outside the door, and they don't see me.
Yeah, almost every time I come here, Natalie's like, watch out for the birds.
They dive bomb. Like they attack. They get so close to your head because they think that you want their baby.
Yeah.
I'm a prisoner in my home. But anyways,
for the
ravens.
sake of the baby bird, that's
Yes.
okay. So though the animals no longer reside at the tower, they are still being heard and spotted long after they've gone. Some who live at the tower and visitors have claimed to hear the distant sounds of roaring lions echoing through the tower at night. The shape of phantom horses galloping through the streets have been reported, some even claiming that they have blazing red eyes. Don't know what that's about. But the most famous animal ghost spotted at the tower has been the story of the phantom bear.
Ooh.
It was the fall of 1817 when a night sentry was stationed at the jewel office, doing his duties, when he was struck with surprise at the sight of a huge bear coming from beyond the jewel room door. He thrust out his bayonet, which stuck in the door behind the bear. So he thought the bear had escaped and went to stab it because it was coming for him. And it just stuck behind the bear into the door. He was overcome with fear and then collapsed on the spot. He was found not long after, still unconscious, and carried away to the guard room. Another guard on duty with him claimed to have been with him just minutes before, and the man was neither drunk nor asleep. So he's like, he was perfectly fine last time I saw him. He was so stricken with fear that 2 days later, the man is said to have died of fright. It scared him so badly, he simply passed away.
That will be me one day. If I was to ever die of a crazy thing, it would be a fright.
A fright?
Yes.
I think so too. For me, I mean. This story was written by a man named E.L. Swifty, keeper of the crown jewels from 1814 to 1852. So he had an official position here. And he pledged his, quote, faith and honor to the validity and honesty of this story.
How do you feel about ghost animals?
I'm intrigued.
Because I know we said like dogs and cats. It's like, oh, cute. They're welcome. Ghost bears.
I mean, I would prefer not. Just because, I think I would be so scared. Especially a ghost bear, out for revenge, being kept in a small cage.
That's true. But can you blame him?
No.
No.
I can't. He is not the only one to supposedly have seen the bear either. In another story from 1782, another guard encountered what he believed was an escaped bear that thrust him from his post. So, actually shot him across. But when he looked back up to where it had just been before, it was no longer there. Just as the man from the previous story, he was shocked and laid there, quote, where he remained till the relief came at 2 a.m, who found him speechless, wallowing in blood. He was injured.
Oh my God.
Some believe the phantom bear to be the ghost of one of the bears who called the tower home over the years.
I think that would be my preferred haunting, though. I'd rather see an angry bear than an angry, person spirit thing.
Maybe. Yeah. Unless it can touch you. I don't know. Mauled by a ghost bear? That's horrifying for someone to have found you and they have no clue what's happening.
That is true.
There's no bear around.
And you're just
Mauled.
maimed.
Yeah. The yeoman warders of the Tower of London, also known as the Beef Eaters, have been guarding the tower since the Tudor period and still reside there today, giving tours and guarding the treasures of England, including the royal armories and the crown jewels, like I mentioned. I saw the crown jewels. It was very cool. I didn't take any pictures though. Or
Why
they're
would
not
you
on my
not?
phone anyway. They were the royal guard at the tower since the time of Henry VIII and were referred to as the beef eaters because they were allowed to eat large rations of beef from the king's table. So they were given that special privilege. Like, these are my most manly guards. They need lots of beef to keep them sturdy. I don't know.
All right. I don't know why that makes me uncomfortable.
I knew it would.
I'm not a fan.
Today, they are made up of men and women who served in the military for at least 22 years, so they're like vets, performing ceremonial duties that have been dutifully completed for centuries at this point. In fact, one of these duties, the ceremony of the keys, has been performed at 10 p.m. every single night for 700 years.
I think I know what you're talking about. I think I've seen that.
You might have.
Mm-hmm.
It was started because in 1340, when Edward III walked into the tower unannounced late one night, nobody even noticed he had arrived. So he just walked up on the tower, walked in, and was like, hello,
Hey.
I could have been an invader.
Scary.
So he imprisoned the guy, the warden, whoever was in charge of the tower, and decided that the tower needed to be locked up every single night at sunset and opened every single day at sunrise to prevent surprise attacks. It was eventually changed to being locked at exactly 10 p.m. every night so that they could have an exact time rather than, hey, I think the sun's going down, let's head over. It was only late one time in the last 700 years, or reported anyway, when a bomb was dropped on the tower during World War II.
Oh.
The chief yeoman warder was blown off of his feet, but unhurt, and continued the ceremony, only being delayed by 7 minutes.
That's dedication. And you know what? I've never cared about a job that much. If I was blown to my feet by a bomb, I'm going home.
That was his home.
No, but I'm
This
going
is another
to
thing.
bed.
They live here, so they're protecting their own home too.
But I'm going to bed. I'm not going to be like, oh, let me
This
just
is
dust
it.
off and go back to work. That's crazy.
Ugh.
I mean, yes, I know it was probably
Yes.
whatever. I'm just joking.
Imagine having that kind of dedication for our serving jobs. A bomb dropped and it was like, sorry, I'll go get your refill.
I could have stubbed my toe and I'm clocking out.
This is it.
I'm leaving. Yes.
Many people of royalty have been imprisoned and killed at the Tower of London, and they are said to contribute to the ghost sightings and unusual activity spotted by visitors and those who live in the tower today, including the yeoman warders and their families. Henry VI was imprisoned in the Tower of London by Edward IV during the War of the Roses. He had spent more than 5 years in 2 separate stints imprisoned at the tower in total. Most who were sentenced to imprisonment at the tower were still given nice quarters to live, especially the royalty. So they were still had a 2-story apartment with a writing desk, and some could go walking about the grounds. Some were even given privileges to go hunting. So they were still, some of them were still fine. They were just kind of on house arrest.
I was about to say they have a curfew.
Yes. And the second time he was sentenced to stay at the tower proved fatal for Henry VI. It is unknown the exact circumstances of his death, but it was first said that he died of melancholy at the news of the death of his son, but suspicion of murder arose. Some believe that he was killed while in prayer in the chapel by agents of the Duke of Gloucester.
Oh, that's kind of sad.
Yeah.
He's vulnerable and praying. I don't know
Yes.
what he did, if he was horrible or whatever, but that's kind of sad.
Yeah. His ghost has been spotted in the Wakefield Tower where he was likely killed. It is said he can be seen at midnight kneeling to pray as he had done just before his death. One story tells of a guard who was startled at the sight of a black-cloaked figure who appeared before him as he walked the tower at night. He couldn't get a good look at the cloaked figure, but it is believed that to be the spirit of Henry VI, seen often on the anniversary of his death.
Honestly, I'm really into this.
Would you?
I would.
Like to see it?
Yeah. I'm becoming real open,
Open?
to not to
Yes.
things coming to me.
Yes.
I'm still very much closed and nobody will mess with me.
But going to a place where it's known, hey, every night at midnight, there's something here.
Yeah, because I think the more that we've talked about it and the more things I've learned, I'm less fearful of it. And it's just kind of oh, if it's just really the ghost of a person, it's I'll be fine.
Yeah, I
Nothing demonic, though. I'm not doing any of that.
truly agree. After this comes an extremely sad story of the princes of the tower. So prepare yourself. This is very sad. After taking control of the throne, Edward IV sent his eldest son, Edward V, to his childhood home in Ludlow Castle to be raised and educated, readying himself for his eventual ascension to the throne. His other son, Richard, Duke of York, remained with his mother and sisters. Edward IV died unexpectedly at the age of 41 from suspected pneumonia or typhoid. I don't know what it would have been called back in the day, and left his brother, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, to care for his heir as Lord Protector. Edward V, just 12 years old, was taken to London upon learning of his father's death, where his uncle Richard met with him. He intercepted the royal caravan, or whatever it was, taking Edward V to the Tower of London, quote, for his protection. His escorts were then arrested, which I think they were his mother's family, and executed on orders of the Duke of Gloucester, so Richard. Elizabeth Woodville, his mother, and the widow of Edward IV, was becoming wary of her new position. So she knew after her husband passed, like things were dicey for her and her family. Members of her family were being executed and arrested, even further than just the royal entourage, and she sought refuge at Westminster Abbey with her children, hoping that this would protect them from what she knew was coming. Soon after, the Lord Protector ordered the young Prince Richard to be brought to the tower to stay with his older brother, again for protection, because he wanted to secure the bloodline, the royal line. Richard, Duke of York, was only 10 years old when he left his mother for the last time and was taken to the Tower of London. Edward V's coronation was scheduled for 22nd of June of 1483, 2 months after his father's death, and the tower is where the coronation would take place. So I'm sure in the young kid's mind, he was like, well, this wasn't the plan, but I mean, I'll be here for my coronation, and, you know, maybe this is a safer place. The last documented sighting of the two young princes was on 16th of June in the Great Chronicle, which placed them in the garden of the tower shooting arrows and playing together. In a whirlwind of events, the princes were declared illegitimate due to their father's marriage to Elizabeth Woodville rather than Lady Eleanor Butler, for whom he was contracted to marry. So when he was younger, parents made an agreement, but he ended up marrying Elizabeth Woodville. He fell in love with her and married her kind of in secret. And so his brother, after he died, was like, well, actually his marriage was illegitimate, so his sons are illegitimate. I am king. And the princes were never seen again. According to an Italian chronicler, Dominic Mancini, the boys were, quote, withdrawn to their inner apartments of the tower proper, and day by day began to be seen more rarely behind the bars and windows until at length they ceased to appear altogether. Already there is suspicion that they have been done away with, unquote. It was suggested that the young boys were moved from the Bloody Tower to the White Tower, where prisoners were typically kept at this time. Nobody truly knows what happened to the boys next, but it is believed that in the fall of 1483, the boys were murdered, though we don't know by whom. Some suspect it was their uncle, Richard III, came and did it himself. Others believe that they were killed by servants of Richard III at the king's direction to make sure that all who could gain power and take his throne were no longer a threat.
I bet it was servants of his that he had killed him, because he sounds like a coward and he wouldn't have done it himself. Maybe. I think. I have beef with this guy.
It depends on whose account you're looking at, because he was depicted, especially by the Tudors after him, as like a devious, horrible creature monster who just murdered everyone. So it may be somewhere in between. But I don't know. No one knows. Richard III was paranoid and even had his close ally Lord Hastings executed at the tower because of his suspicions. So he thought someone was going to take his crown from him and was just having people killed. It wasn't until 1674, so almost 200 years later, under the reign of Charles II, that they had any more information on the young princes. Charles II ordered the demolition of what remained of the royal palace on the grounds. Workers who were tearing down the walls of like the old walls found a turret with a private staircase that led to St. John's Chapel. Buried beneath the stairs, about 10 feet beneath, was a wooden chest that contained the remains of 2 children. Eyewitnesses to the discovery claimed to find pieces of clothes and velvet stuck to the bones, and only royals were wearing velvet at the time. The bones were suspected to be that of the lost princes, and Charles II had the remains reburied in Westminster Abbey, and they have a plaque and stuff for them.
That is horribly sad.
The remains are still there today. They were interred in 1933 for a forensics examination, just to make sure, because they're like, I don't know what kind of examinations they were doing in the 1600s, which concluded that they were in fact the bones of 2 boys aged somewhere between 10 and 13.
Yeah, so checks out.
Yeah. Those were not the only remains found at the tower over the years, though. In the early 1600s, it is reported that 2 skeletons were found behind a wall of one of the towers, and in 1623, the remains of a suspected child were found, quote, in a high, desolate turret. So other remains were found about. Whatever fate that befell the young princes, some believe to still see them from time to time at the tower. There have been claims of spotting 2 young boys in nightgowns at the top of the stairs in the tower, in the White Tower. When seen, it is said that they look frightened and are holding on to one another, holding hands and just scared. They've also been seen all throughout the site, but mostly in the White Tower, gliding from room to room and always together.
I don't like that one at all.
No, I told you this one was a hard one.
Yeah, maybe I wouldn't want to go.
Very sad. Many of the reported hauntings seem to be tied to the Tower of London's reputation as the prison and site of torture and executions of the past. Though the tower was not built as a prison, it was quickly turned to one in the early 1100s when Henry I had Ranulph Flambard, what a name, the Bishop of Durham, arrested for selling administrative positions in the church. He was the first prisoner held at the prison. He later escaped his capture, though the first prisoner actually was the first escapee. One particularly unsettling execution happened at the tower in the 1470s. George Plantagenet, Duke of Clarence, was put to death for high treason against his brother Edward IV. Some believe his death was by drowning headfirst in his favorite Malmsey wine. I don't know if he chose that death. He was like, if I'm gonna die, I might as well die in my favorite drink. Or if someone just murdered him like that.
What a way to go.
This isn't obviously the only unusual or horrific death that happened in the tower. In 1546, 25-year-old Anne Askew was arrested and brought to the tower for questioning. She was accused of being a Protestant heretic, but refused to give up the names of anyone else working with her and worshipping with her. She was brought to the rack. She was one of the few people actually tortured at the tower, and I believe the only woman, I think. She underwent 2 so-called examinations. According to her own accounts, after the ordeal, she was only tortured once of these 2 examinations, but that was enough to cause great damage. She was threatened with torture at first when she did not reveal the names of her fellow practicing Protestants. After still not telling the guards anything, she was placed on the rack wearing nothing but her shift. Her wrists and ankles were tied to the device, and her torturers turned the wheel. The device stretched her limbs until she was completely taut, 5 inches above the bed. Anne fainted from the pain, was lowered from the device, revived, and then it was done to her over again 2 more times.
That just made me feel lightheaded.
She still did not give up any names. She held strong, and Askew was sentenced to death. She was so badly injured, some say her limbs pulled from their sockets, and that she had to be carried in a chair to her execution, where she was burned at the stake with several other heretics.
Oh my God.
The use of the rack is thought to be the cause of some of the screams of terror heard by those at the tower at night, as well as the sound of the rack being turned. So people claim to hear the rack being turned when no one's in the room. Some have reported hearing the screams of torture where the rack is placed today, and when they go inside, no one's there.
They
obviously.
still have it?
Oh yeah, it's on display. In the basement of the White Tower today, you can find an original executioner's block from the 18th century, the same kind that would have been used for those sentenced to death at the tower, as well as an axe that is believed to date back to the Tudor period. It was believed at first that it was the axe that caused the demise of Anne Boleyn, but actually it was found that she was killed with a sword rather than an axe. 7 people were executed within the walls of the tower before the World Wars, and 112 documented executions occurred on the Tower Hill in a 400-year period. So though it was like said to be like this place of torture and prison and death and everything, not that many compared to the years that it's been open, you know?
Well, I mean,
Still bad. One is enough. Don't get me wrong. But like its reputation far exceeds like the actuality of
what
the
people
situation.
say.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like you said, 1 is enough.
One's enough. Trust me. I'm there. Some of the more notable deaths occurring were the deaths of those of a higher status. Lady Arbella Stuart died in the tower after being imprisoned for 5 years after marrying William Seymour against the king's orders. So he believed that they were a threat to his crown, like their union, and he didn't give permission, and she married him anyway because she loved him. And she is said to have starved to death in the tower in 1615 from her refusal to eat. She just said, I'm not doing it anymore. Guy Fawkes is thought to have been interrogated and tortured in the basement of the White Tower before his execution, maybe with a rack, I'm not sure. But you know, Guy Fawkes.
I was about to say, why do I know that?
Remember the 5th of November?
Oh, okay.
The plot to like blow up Parliament.
Yes, okay. I was about to say Guy Fawkes. Do I know him? But I do.
Also, have you seen V for Vendetta?
Yes.
He wears a Guy Fawkes mask.
Oh, okay.
Sir Thomas More was beheaded in the Tower when he refused to recognize Henry VIII as the head of the Church of England. So Henry VIII was
He's a terrible guy.
He's a bad guy. He's a bad guy.
I've heard lots of things about him.
He got a lot of use out of the Tower, actually. A lot. The death of Margaret Pole, the sister of Edward IV and Richard III, was executed in a most horrific way at the Tower of London. She was in great favor with King Henry VIII at the beginning of his reign. But when her son, Reginald Pole, spoke out against the king for his annulment with Catherine of Aragon, things began to turn for her. So her son was like a major critic. He moved out of, because his life was in danger, and wrote about, like, no, like, you are not the head of the church. This is a Catholic nation. Like, you can't annul your marriage to this woman. And his mother got a lot of it. His whole family, really. In November of 1538, many members of the Pole family were arrested for treason and taken to the Tower.
But they didn't do it.
I know. Well, I think some of them were kind of agreed with him, but Margaret, as far as she said, did not. Margaret was 65 years old at the time, which was elderly for the Tudor period, and was questioned for doubts about her loyalty. She was eventually stripped of her titles and held prisoner at the Tower. At the age of 67, Margaret was sentenced to death by beheading, but she was no traitor, or so she said. It is rumored that she refused to place her head on the chopping block, escaping capture for a moment, but ultimately being chased down by the executioner. It took 11 blows for him to get his job done, missing many of the swings and instead placing his blade at her shoulders and other parts of her body. She was beatified by Pope Leo the 13th in 1886 and dubbed a Catholic martyr. These are the words found on the wall of her cell, which are said to have been etched there by Margaret. Quote, "For traitors on the block should die. I am no traitor, no, not I. My faithfulness stands fast, and so, towards the block I shall not go, nor make one step, as you shall see. Christ, in thy mercy save thou me."
I've heard of this before.
Have
I'm
you?
actually really shocked at how much of this I actually already knew.
am too. I didn't know you knew a lot of English history.
I know, I didn't know either, but yeah, this
British
one
history.
is one that,
Yeah, I don't like it.
I don't like it
It's
at all.
horrible. When I first read about it, I had to stop for a minute and just like take a deep breath because. Oof. Anne Boleyn, Henry VIII's second wife, was also beheaded at the Tower, this time by a skilled swordsman, as I said, after she was accused of adultery. She protested these claims, and it is believed that Henry VIII did this out of convenience to rid himself of another wife. She wasn't giving him a male heir. And
yeah, he was a bad guy.
yeah, he was. She was buried in the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula, and Henry VIII married one of her ladies-in-waiting, Jane Seymour, 11 days later. 11 days after her death. Thomas Cromwell was executed at the Tower the same day that the king married his fifth wife, Catherine Howard. She too was accused of adultery and sentenced to death at the Tower, along with Jane Boleyn, sister of Anne Boleyn, or sister-in-law of Anne Boleyn, and Catherine's attendant. She was like one of her closest ladies' maids. She may have been only 18 years old when she died and was buried along with Anne Boleyn in the same chapel. She was a very young bride.
That's horribly sad.
One of the most famous executions at the Tower of London was that of Lady Jane Grey. She was the cousin of Mary I and Elizabeth I, Henry VIII's oldest daughters. She was queen for only 9 days after the death of Edward VI. It is believed that she had no particular interest in the crown. Not really. She was just more a pawn placed there for power for relatives and people who helped her grow up. When Mary I rode into London and took back her claim on the crown, she arrested Lady Jane, her family, her husband's family, and kind of everyone involved. She remained imprisoned in the Tower of London, at first saved from death, so Mary didn't really want to kill her. But she changed her mind after a plot was uncovered about returning the Protestants to the throne to replace Mary I. They didn't particularly plan to put Jane back on the throne, but her father was involved, and that sealed her fate. Lady Jane Grey was beheaded on Tower Green at only 17 years old after watching her beloved husband's body be carried away from his own execution. She saw him from the window. She too was buried in the same places as Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard. Kings and queens continued to use the Tower as a prison, holding people you may know, including Sir Walter Raleigh. He was imprisoned here for many years under Elizabeth I, and executing many more. The last beheading that occurred at the Tower was after the Scottish Jacobite Rebellion, when Simon Fraser, I think his name was Lord Lovat, was executed for his role in the rebellion. The Tower continued to be a place of imprisonment for many years. One of the last were the Cray twins in 1952. So the last of the executions performed at the Tower was during World War I and World War II, where spies were executed on the grounds. The last person known to be killed at the Tower of London was Joseph Jacobs in 1941.
Oh, wow. 1941.
So pretty close. He was an accused spy of World War II.
So not that long ago.
No, not even 100 years. The Tower today, and for many years prior, is a huge tourist attraction. So people have been coming to the Tower for hundreds of years, just in awe.
To marvel.
Yes, it's still holding the crown jewels on display for the public, as well as many other relics from the country's past. But what we are most interested in are all of the spirits that still walk the grounds today. The Beefeaters and their families, still living on the grounds to this day, have reported a great deal of after-hours encounters. From beds shaking to being lifted while they sleep, doors opening on their own, footsteps being heard down long, empty corridors, and the sounds of chains dragging from down in the basement.
Ooh, don't like that.
No, there have been plenty of claims of full-body apparitions, and there are even rooms that some of their pets won't enter. In the 1980s, several yeoman warders working early morning shifts claimed to see the Beefeaters dressed in a style of their uniforms from years before. So they walked into a room and they're like,
Hey.
double Spider-Man.
Yeah, like, what are you doing?
They were said to have been standing by the fireplace, smoking pipes, and seemed to be in deep conversation, when one of them suddenly looked up at the two that were walking into the room and then disappeared. One of the most known spirits at the Tower of London is believed to belong to Anne Boleyn. So like we said in the very beginning, many have claimed to see her headless form walking about the White Tower and even the chapel in which she was buried. There's one story of a soldier seeing lights coming from within the chapel late one night. He was just kind of on patrol. He approached the building and climbed up to look through a window to get a better view at what he would be walking into. That's when he claimed to see the procession of knights and ladies walking through the chapel, led by the headless form of a woman. It was Anne Boleyn. He was transfixed by the view, completely unable to move until the lights faded right before his eyes and the ghostly figures dissipated with it. She continues to be seen to this day, mostly with her head tucked beneath her arm. just carrying her head around the
You
Tower
know
of
what,
London.
Queen? I would. If I died a horrible death and it was just an injustice had been done to me,
Mm-hmm.
I'm roaming for a while. Because I'm a vengeful person.
You are. See, you're the type of ghost that I would not want to encounter.
Yeah. Well, if you didn't do me wrong, I'm not going to do anything.
How do I know that in death you just get more angry?
No,
You're like anyone who I come across.
Nah. It would just be the ones that did me wrong.
Another strange story comes from the same man who told the stories of the Phantom Bear. He is an E.L. Swifty. He claimed that one night while having dinner with his family, he experienced something so unusual that he didn't know what to make of it at first. And here is his account. Quote, on the night in question, the doors were all closed. Heavy and dark cloth curtains were let down over the windows, and the only light in the room was that of 2 candles on the table. I sat at the foot of the table, my son on my right hand, his mother fronting the chimney piece, and her sister on the opposite side. I had offered a glass of wine and water to my wife when, on putting it to her lips, she paused and exclaimed, "Good God, what is that?" I looked up and saw a cylindrical figure, like a glass tube, seemingly about the thickness of my arm and hovering between the ceiling and the table. Its contents appeared to be a dense fluid, white and pale azure, like the gathering of a summer cloud, and incessantly rolling and mingling within the cylinder. This lasted about 2 minutes, when it began slowly to move before my sister-in-law, then, following the oblong shape of the table before my son and myself. Passing behind my wife, it paused for a moment over her right shoulder, observed there was no mirror opposite her in which she could then behold it. Instantly, she crouched down and with both hands covering her shoulder shrieked out, "Oh Christ, it has seized me!" Even now, while writing, I feel the fresh horror of that moment. I caught up my chair, struck at the wainscot behind her, rushed upstairs to the other children's room, and told the terrified nurse what I had seen. Meanwhile, the other domestic had hurried into the parlor, where their mistress recounted to them the scene, even as I was detailing it above stairs.
Huh?
Very weird. Some cylindrical tube of light floated through their room.
For 2 minutes?
Yeah, I don't like it. I heard someone say that like maybe it was ball lightning or something. Though I don't know how ball lightning works or how it could get inside, especially with all the windows and doors closed and everything. I don't know. There have been several claims of strange glowing and lights floating through the White Tower, as if the ghostly figures of those past are walking through the halls, candles lit. So people will see through windows like lights kind of floating about. Guards have claimed to see the shadows of a large axe coming down across Tower Green, as if reliving over and over the many executions set in that location. Some believe they can still hear the screams of Margaret Pole as she attempts to escape her own beheading. And the image of Lady Jane Grey has been spotted on many occasions, shimmering in white, and particularly on the anniversary of her death. The Tower of London has its own Lady in White, seen by children waving from a window or silently drifting between rooms. She could be a number of unfortunate victims of the time. Sometimes she is accompanied by the strong smell of an old perfume after she has been sighted, and usually elicits an intense chill from people. But there's also a lady in black that has been spotted in the Bloody Tower of the Tower of London. One tourist in 1970 claimed to have seen a woman with long hair and a long black velvet dress standing in front of a window with a gold medallion around her neck. She thought it was a performer before the woman faded right before her eyes. She may also be the culprit of many taps on the shoulder from unseen hands.
Do we know who she is, or do we speculate?
One of the many people, royal people.
I mean, she's wearing velvet, so yeah.
Noble woman.
She's a royal of some sort, but
Yes.
no
But I don't
theories?
None that I saw, but it could be anyone.
Hmm.
900 years of royals being murdered.
Jesus, yeah.
All throughout the grounds, yeoman warders have reported seeing men dressed in period clothing walking about and along trails known to be those paths taken by prisoners from hundreds of years ago. So I think it was like Northumberland or something was known to walk a certain path every single day, and they've seen who they believe is him walking that same path. Most of the spirits of the Tower of London are harmless, reliving their last moments and wandering the halls they knew long before. But there are a few encounters that have a more sinister nature to them. Around Henry VIII's armor, it's always Henry VIII, I swear.
Always is.
Guards have reported something so frightening and believe it must be possessed by a malevolent being, like the armor itself.
I believe it.
Over the years, guards walking around the armor at night have experienced the same sensation. They first will get a sense of total dread as they approach the armor, or the room with the armor really. Chills will run along their spine as they attempt to continue their duties. Then, they get the feeling as if they are being crushed alive, as if the weight of the heavy armor itself is pinning them to the very spot. Some have even claimed to get the sensation of invisible hands wrapping around their throats, choking the life out of them. One such guard was able to escape the room, but had the remnants of bright red marks around their neck. I read of one encounter of a man who saw like a cloak or like wisps of a cloak, and then all of a sudden it was behind him, pulling him back, choking him, and he couldn't free himself. And eventually he gasped for air and ran out.
I mean, I would believe if anyone had any evil around their haunting, it would be Henry VIII.
Or
Yeah.
Richard III.
Oh.
The one with the princes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but Henry VIII, he's more notorious.
He is.
Everyone knows about him being a sick little freak. You
That
know?
is true.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
Freak.
Yeah.
Imagine telling Henry VIII, like, you sick little freak.
I would. And then I'd be beheaded.
And then you would be beheaded.
Mhm.
Another guard, Mr. Arthur Crick, decided to rest for a moment one night as he made his rounds. So he kind of walking around and he's like, I'll sit for a second. No one will miss me. Sitting on a ledge, he slipped off his right shoe when a voice behind him whispered, "There's only you and I here." Eliciting from Arthur the very earthly response, "Just let me get this bloody shoe on and there'll only be you."
I would have left the shoe.
Like it's just us.
I would have left the shoe.
Just take
Like
off
it's you
running.
in my shoe now because I am gone.
There are other locations about the tower grounds where a dark cloud has been spotted rolling over the river and towards Trader's Gate. It is unknown where the dark cloud or the other evil spirits may be coming from, but it may be best that the doors of the Tower of London are closed and locked every night at 10 p.m. There's no telling which spirits seek to take its revenge from the dark and gruesome events that have occurred here for almost 1,000 years.
I mean, if something's that old, it just has to be haunted. And I feel like
Yes.
most things in London are
Just in general.
because it's so old,
Yeah.
you know? Like, yes, there are places in America that are old, but
I mean, all of the land is old, but these are buildings with
yes,
like documented histories.
I'm talking about buildings and structures and things because, yes, the land obviously is old, but
Yes.
like, it's nothing to see a building from the 1100s. And it's like, what?
I
That's
know.
crazy.
I was kind of amazed when I went to London and seeing this stuff because, like, especially like here in Texas, it's like, wow, 200 years. And there it's like, my grandma lives in a 200-year-old house.
Yes, it's so crazy.
Anyway, that's the Tower of London. Very cool.
I'm into it.
Also, with you talking about like the hauntings of old buildings and stuff, like hauntings of land, like you'll get a shiver, you'll experience something, but you don't know what it is because there's no documentation. Like here, there's documentation. You can guess, like, this is Anne Boleyn, this is Margaret Pole, this is what happened here and this is why. And I find that a little more interesting having a background, having a history, you know?
Yes, and it's less mystery, but because if you're standing out in a field, it could be someone from 2 days ago. It could be someone from
2,000
millions
years
of years.
ago?
Like,
Yeah.
it could be anyone or anything. So, yeah,
Mhm.
I agree with you on that. It's
Yeah.
cool to know or think you know who you're seeing or encountering.
Yes.
Makes it more interesting.
I agree. So like I said, the Tower of London, London in general, vast history. Please go look into it if you're interested. It was so good. Like I said, I had like 50 pages of research and I cut it down to like 12 pages because I didn't want to bore anybody.
It was
but
still history heavy even then.
Yeah, it was, but there was so much more. Like I had it written out, like the histories and lives of like Anne Boleyn and Jane Seymour, or Jane Grey and everyone. So
I would have been into it.
I know you would have. I just
So,
didn't want to,
This isn't the
have
history
a 6
channel.
hours history pod.
Yeah, we're not the history channel, but the internet is out there for everyone. So
Yes.
Google it because I will be.
It's so interesting. I told her, she's like, it's taking you a long time to write this. I was like, I am learning the history of the British monarchy right now. Like this is just what it is.
Because it's so interesting.
Very,
Drama.
very.
Tragedy, but drama.
Yes. Shakespeare had a lot to pull from when he was writing his plays.
Yes. Funny you say that because the gift you brought me from London, the souvenir, was a Shakespeare book of insults.
It was,
have
wasn't
it.
it? That's
I
so
have
good.
it in
Because I
my
went
little-
to the Globe or whatever it's
Yep,
called.
I have it in my little closet over there.
I'd like to see it.
Okay.
Let's read some insults.
Okay.
If you'd like to hear some insults, you can go to our Patreon at patreon.com/ghosties. Please like this video if you liked it. Share it with your friends if you feel compelled to do so, and subscribe for more. If you're on audio, please leave us 5 stars. That really helps us in the algorithm, helps more people see us and want to watch us if they see lots of 5 stars. And if you would like to follow along with more of the things that we've got going on, you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at GhostiesPod. Please subscribe to this video because we've got a listener stories coming on Thursday. Listener stories 50. It's our half. What's
I
the
know.
word? Centennial.
Bicentennial.
Yep.
It is. And someone commented, it's like one more episode until Natalie freaks out. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I'm excited.
I am.
And if you're still here, leave a tea emoji.
Very good.
You know, the British and us. Leave a
Yes.
tea.
And for
Cup.
this tea that we had today, because it was something. Thanks to whoever sent it. It was a mystery.
Thank you.
And we appreciate it.
Please comment if it was you because we don't know. They sent us 2 teas. Kind of crazy that we're just drinking it, but
I mean, it was sent from the manufacturer, like the person who made the tea. So
it was sealed. But still, An unknown sender sent us some pine tea. Feels like a prank.
It might be.
But thank you so much either way. I really do appreciate it.
Yes.
And there's another one that they sent us that I'm excited to try. So.
Me too. I remember reading it and thinking, this sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's what we've got for you today. So come back on Thursday for another listener stories, and then come back next Monday for another deep dive into something spooky.
Yep. Goodbye.